I am live. I hope this transmits okay. I'm doing this on my laptop rather than on my phone. Sometimes the sound distorts a bit. I hope that's not the case in this one. I'm reading the chapter entitled How to Play Post Office. It's out of A Lot to Remember, which is a book Joan wrote about her travels in this part of France. And it was dedicated to Denys and Charles, both her husbands. Um, I had already read the first part of this, and I continue the second part of this chapter. She is explaining quite funny uh, happenings in a French post office. He then asks you in very rapid French at what rate you wish to send it. This is a telegram. Le plus vite, you say doggedly. By now, you have been so spendthrift with time that it would be pointless to economize with money. He darts meaning glances at her sycophants, which convey, regard the terrible extravagance of the English, who for years used to sell us that currency restrictions made them hoard their francs. For customers from the United States, her bob will be consider the ostentation of the disgustingly rich Americans. He, while the crowd stares at you, she scrabbles through several cupboards and eventually unearths a tattered book in which she laboriously looks up the tariff. He then does elaborate sums on the back of an old envelope and announces the total. Victory seems within your grasp, but it's only a chimera. She looks again at the form, shrugs her shoulders to express how can one cope with the idiocy of foreigners, and explains loudly and slowly so that the audience may realize you are judged to be deaf as well as mentally deficient, that you have deliberately wasted her time by writing in pencil when everyone knows that telegrams cannot be dispatched unless written clearly in ink. Should you have used ink, she will employ the gambit that you have failed to use capital letters throughout, for the novice invariably puts and or street in script. H. The joiner now crumbles your carefully composed message and drops it disdainfully into her waste paper basket. And you, as in the game of snakes and ladders, go back to the beginning and start all over again. It is a comfort to know that after all these preliminaries, the actual transmission of telegrams is very efficient, and that letters flow to and fro from remote villages with alacrity. But something very mysterious happens to parcels. Early in June 1956, my publisher dispatched three parcels to me by the same post from London, one containing the typescript, the other two being page proofs of Time Out of Mind. I was with Madame Rocher at Saint-Cirque-la-Popie, which in this narrative I shall not reach until chapter 17. When the page proofs arrived, yet remained uncorrected because the typescript was missing, its absence became a subject of kind inquiry throughout the village. Eventually, I copied with the proofs without the transcripts, and about a month later happened to mention its loss when chatting in the post office of Saint-Césaire. It is a most delightful post office, and I have been accepted by the personnel almost as one of the family since spending 2 hours with them, during which work was suspended, while we stood in the doorway cheering the bicyclists who flashed past in a final spurt of qualifying heat for the Tour de France. You have lost a parcel, chorused the young man and the two pretty girls with whom I had so often gossiped. Suddenly they had become alert as bloodhounds. Had I filled in the form especially designed for tracing parcels? I said I had not done so, and thought it must by now be so thoroughly lost that it had best been forgotten. But why did I think it was lost when it had been missing only for a month? have searched for it earlier might have seemed unduly impatient, but now was the moment to fill in the relevant form, and by a benign chance they had one, and would assist me to complete it correctly. This exercise, with the additional aid of some customers, I at last achieved, in itself a triumph, for the questions were of extreme complexity, and the space allotted to each answer no larger than a postage stamp. A few days later, I was playing billiard with Charles in the cafe where we had entertained the funambulists, when an urgent message was relayed to us from the Tourette Dorée. Would we return at once to the hotel? For there was a telephone call for us of the greatest urgency. Jostled by thoughts of disaster, I ran down the street and felt dizzy with relief to hear that the urgent call had not come from England, but from Madame Rocher. She must have been waiting by the telephone, so rapidly were we connected. You must come at once, she cried. Tomorrow at the latest. At last it has arrived. Your parcel. It was last night by goods train. Imagine my indignation when I was told. I made them admit it, that for all this time it has been hiding from us, from the whole village, in the parcels office run by the Cratins who occupy the station of Toulouse. No one was ever able to explain why a parcel sent by post should arrive without extra charge by goods train, or why it should overshoot its mark by 100 miles before languishing in some reedy backwater of the transport system. It's just one of the inexplicable things which happen to parcels when they weigh more than a kilo, and even the London Library was defeated by the French parcel system. A book they posted to me on the 3rd of May arrived on the 14th of September. The next one is chapter 13 on priests and plumbing. Today is the 25th of October 25.